stillness of my apartment enveloped me that evening, a suffocating quiet that seemed to pulse with the weight of my own isolation. It was a Tuesday, the kind of night where the city's distant hum faded into a void, leaving only the soft creak of the floorboards and the faint tick of a clock I rarely noticed. My phone lay on the coffee table, its screen casting a ghostly glow beside my cold mug of coffee, a ritualistic sentinel to my idle slouch in the armchair. The coffee had long since lost its warmth, its surface filmed with a thin sheen, a mirror to my own detachment as I scrolled through social media. The parade of images flickered past. Weddings draped in floral arches, vacations framed by sun-drenched shores, promotions toasted with flutes of champagne, snapshots of lives I half remembered from high school or fleeting encounters. These glimpses stirred little beyond a faint nostalgia, a whisper of lives moving forward while mine stagnated. Then, amid the stream, a photograph seized me, halting my thumb mid-scroll. It depicted a man and a woman, the woman's face snapping into recognition with a jolt, Betty Miles, though that surname no longer fit her. The man took a moment longer to place. His features coalesced into memory. Kyle, her husband. The image had been captured at a funeral. The gray sky pressing down like a shroud, a handful of blurry figures huddled in the background, their forms indistinct against the bleak horizon. Betty stood with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if warding off an invisible chill, her head bowed slightly, her expression carved with a grief so profound it seemed to leach the color from the scene. The caption beneath read, "Kyle is dead." I'm at a loss for words. All I can do is try to move on. My heart lurched, a physical stutter that reverberated through the silence, the shock of it rooting me to the chair. I hadn't spoken to Betty in over a decade, our bond from high school severed by time, distance, and the quiet drift of adulthood. Yet seeing her in this raw state of mourning pierced me with an unexpected ache. I read the words again, then a third time, each pass deepening the hollow in my chest. Part of me yearned to scroll past, to honor the privacy of her pain. I knew the jagged edge of loss, the way it carved out pieces of you, but I couldn't. Kyle was my age, a peer snatched away by some unseen hand, and the realization anchored me, a tether to a past I'd buried. My reflection stared back from the window, pale and uncertain, the dim light casting shadows across my face. I opened my contacts, searching for her name. It appeared as Betty Miles, a relic of our youth, unchanged since those locker-lined halls, not even updated after her marriage to Kyle. Hesitating, my fingers hovered over the keyboard, crafting a message. "Hey Betty, I saw your post. I'm so sorry about Kyle. I don't know what to say, but you're in my thoughts. Okay." Revising it multiple times, the words feeling inadequate, overly formal compared to my usual terse exchanges. Finally, I sent it, setting the phone down with a clatter, convincing myself she wouldn't reply. Not tonight, at least, with grief so fresh. But a minute later, it buzzed, nearly toppling my coffee as I lunged for it. "Thanks, Len. I didn't expect to hear from you, but it means a lot." The message was curt, a single line, yet its tone carried a warmth that evoked her voice, speaking directly to me across the years. Then another appeared. "Actually, I could really use someone to talk to. I don't mean to dump this on you, but I've been planning to go up to Kyle's family cabin later this month. I don't want to go alone. Any chance you'd want to come? I know it's out of the blue, to say the least, but just think about it, okay?" Her words hinted at a loneliness beneath the surface, a grief she masked with practicality, the invitation a lifeline thrown into the void. I licked my lips, rereading the message, the weight of it settling. Did I want to join her? To revisit a past I'd buried beneath layers of routine? Or stay here, cocooned in the silence of my apartment, the darkness pooling in the corners, the dust gathering like memories? The choice crystallized, here offered nothing but a hollow echo. I typed back, "I'll go," and sent it. Her response came swiftly. "You have no idea how much this means. Thank you." I exhaled, the decision settling like a stone, the road ahead already forming in my mind. The journey began days later, on a crisp morning that carried the promise of autumn's deepening grip. The highway stretched behind me, Chicago's towering skyline receding in the rearview mirror, its glass and steel giving way to sprawling fields of golden stubble and clusters of trees that grew denser with each passing mile. The road wound through hills, dipping and rising like a gentle ocean swell, lined with trees casting dappled shadows across the asphalt in the late afternoon sun. I kept the window cracked, the crisp air seeping in, carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves. A fragrance that tightened my chest with a mix of nostalgia and unease. A scent that dragged me back to childhood hikes and forgotten promises. I tried to keep my mind blank, focusing on the rhythm of the engine, but the landscape conspired against me. Each curve a mirror to the person I'd been before bitterness took root, before the divorce, before the quiet unraveling of hope. The last time I'd ventured into such wilds, I was younger, my steps lighter, my heart unscarred by the abrasions of life's disappointments. The farmland gradually gave way to dense forest, the road narrowing to a gravel path that crunched beneath my tires, forcing me to switch on my headlights as the trees closed in, their branches forming a canopy that darkened the world around me. Shadows stretched across the ground, shifting with the wind, and I spotted the mailbox first. Rusted, weathered, the name Hollis barely legible, its letters eaten by time. I turned onto the dirt driveway, the tires grinding over gravel, pines towering on either side, their needles brushing the car's roof as if testing my presence. The cabin came into view, modest as Betty had described. A single-story structure with a wraparound porch, the wood gray and weathered, nestled among evergreens that whispered in the breeze. A thin plume of smoke rose from the chimney, vanishing into the canopy, evoking the kind of place Kyle might have cherished, a retreat carved from the wild. Betty sat on the porch steps, a bottle of wine beside her and an empty glass in hand, the liquid catching the fading light. She wore an oversized sweater that made her appear small, fragile. Her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun that spoke of days uncombed by grief. As my car rolled to a stop, she waved, a smile flickering across her face like a candle in a draft, though sadness lingered in her eyes, a shadow that deepened her gaze. Her waiting outside, the forced cheer in her voice as she called, "Len," stirred unease. Had I misjudged coming here, stepping into a sorrow I couldn't fathom? I parked and stepped out, the cold biting through my coat, the air sharp with pine and earth. "Hey, Betty," I replied, managing a small smile that felt thin on my lips. She surprised me with a hug, her perfume, unchanged since high school, a floral note that clung to memory, mingling with the crisp air, her embrace strong yet gentle, trembling with a vulnerability I hadn't expected. I hesitated, then returned it, feeling her shudder as she pulled back, wiping tears from her eyes with a nervous laugh. "Sorry about that," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been emotional lately." "Don't worry about it," I assured her, the words a lifeline tossed into her grief. She nodded, motioning me to follow with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Come on." I already had a glass of wine, but I saved some for you. We settled on the porch, me in a creaking chair, her on the steps again, the wood groaning under her weight. She poured me a glass, the ruby liquid catching the fading light, a ritual that felt both intimate and distant. "It's been a long time," she said, her voice soft, testing the air between us. "Yeah, I wasn't sure you'd recognize me," I quipped, brushing a hand through my hair. "Cheaper than dyeing it." She laughed quietly through her nose, a sound that warmed the space, and for a while, we sat in comfortable silence, the buzz of insects and rustle of trees filling the void. "Used to be afraid of these woods when I was a kid," she said after a pause, her gaze drifting to the tree line. "Thought there might be something out there. Still could be," I joked, though her smile vanished, replaced by a distant look. "Sometimes I think it would be easier if there was," she murmured, her words heavy with a meaning I couldn't grasp. I sipped my wine, letting the silence stretch, her gaze lost in the forest, the shadows lengthening as the sun dipped below the horizon. The evening unfolded in a strange duality. We laughed, reminiscing about high school antics, the pranks and late-night drives, but our conversations inevitably circled back to heavier topics. Kyle, the losses we'd endured, the silences that followed. She didn't ask about my divorce, and I didn't volunteer, though I sensed she saw the sadness etched into the lines of my face, the weight I carried. As the wine dwindled, the bottle nearly empty, she stood, pointing at the fire lookout tower piercing the treetops. "Do you want to go up there and watch the stars?" she asked, her voice tentative. "Sure, why not?" I agreed, the prospect of height and distance appealing. The stairs were steeper than expected, the wood worn and uneven, leaving me winded at the top, my breath fogging in the cool air. But the view stole my breath. The forest spread out like an ocean of black, stars bright and close, almost tangible, a canopy of light against the night. I leaned against the railing, the wine buzzing in my head, everything fuzzy yet acutely real, the world below a distant memory. "He used to love it up here," Betty said softly, her voice a thread in the stillness. "Kyle. He said it made everything seem small and insignificant." "I can see why," I replied, my gaze tracing the constellations. "It's strange, though, being up here with you rather than him. Makes me feel a little guilty." Her words hung, a confession I couldn't answer. "And you?" she added, her gaze sympathetic, searching my face. "You look like you have something on your mind, too." I laughed, shaking my head. "Just everything." She placed a hand on my arm, and a sharp pain stabbed my chest, dulled by the wine, a reminder of wounds I'd buried. We stood in silence, the stars bearing witness, the night stretching into an intimacy I hadn't anticipated. I awoke with a start, breath caught in my throat, the car's interior slowly resolving around me as if emerging from a dream. My neck ached from resting against the passenger window, a sharp pain throbbing in my head, a dull drumbeat of disorientation. Confusion gripped me. I remembered returning to the cabin with Betty late last night, realizing I'd left my wallet in the car, then nothing. Exhaustion must have claimed me, the wine and emotional weight dragging me into sleep. My shoes were missing, socks damp against the cold floor, the window slightly rolled down, admitting a chill that raised goosebumps. A stale taste coated my mouth, a remnant of cheap wine, a dull ache gnawing at my stomach. I glanced at the cabin. No Betty on the porch, the steps empty, the smoke from the chimney gone, a silence that felt unnatural. She'd mentioned gathering firewood, but an unease settled in, the night's events a blur of stars and shadows. I stepped out, the damp ground stinging through my socks, stones and twigs pressing into my soles, and called, "Betty!" My voice was hoarse, swallowed by the morning air, answered only by the chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves. The absence of her presence, the vanished smoke, raised goosebumps, a primal warning tingling my spine. Inside, the wine bottle lay tipped over on the floor by the stairs, glasses beside it, the red stain seeping into the wood, but something felt off. A blanket folded differently, a chair shifted an inch, subtle shifts that whispered of intrusion. In the kitchen, the pantry door gaped open, its contents ransacked. Ground beef torn open, meat missing, can scattered across the floor, a chaos that defied explanation. A knot formed in my stomach, bile rising as I considered the possibilities. Animals? But how had they escaped without more destruction, without leaving tracks? The basement beckoned, its air cold and moist, carrying a sweet, unsettling scent that turned my stomach, a hint of decay beneath the earthiness. A crack in the wall near the furnace, barely an inch wide, made my skin crawl, and a faint scraping noise emanated from within, a sound that froze my blood. I retreated, heart pounding, hearing footsteps outside. Betty's laugh, familiar yet jarring. She emerged from the path, firewood in arms, dirt on her clothes, pine needles in her hair. "Good morning," she said, smiling. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I stammered about her absence, the pantry mess, the wall sounds, my voice trembling. She laughed it off. "Probably a raccoon. This place is old, full of weird noises." But the twin of anxiety lingered, a shadow that clung as we drove back to town, her humming a stark contrast to the dread coiling within me. The small town's quiet unnerved me, a stillness that felt watchful, a prickling sensation crawling across my skin as I stepped from the truck. The air smelled of autumn and smoke, the sun warm on my face, yet a strange feeling of being observed tightened my chest. Inside the grocery store, the lights hummed with a yellowish glow, casting long shadows. Betty moved with familiarity, grabbing a cart, while locals stared. An old man by the cash register, a woman with a toddler who averted her gaze. "They're just curious," Betty said, her voice low. "Small town charm. Everyone's got a deep need to know who everyone else is." She tossed crackers into the cart, grinning. "If you're lucky, the cashier might ask if you're my boyfriend." I chuckled, though unease lingered. The cashier lingered on her. The old man fixed on me with a worried gaze, a silent question in his eyes. Back at the cabin, darkness fell, the air thickening with tension. We played cards, her mention of Kyle's poker losses a bittersweet note. "Years of poker nights," she said with a smirk. "Kyle hated losing, but he had the worst bluff face." The words carried a weight, and as the wine dwindled, scratching outside, "Coyotes," she insisted, though her knuckles whitened. The noises grew, a thud, a moan, and the power died, leaving only the fireplace's dim glow. A creak from the hallway, a guttural croak. Betty grabbed a crossbow, declaring we'd flee to the fire tower. Barefoot, we ran, a pale shape vanishing near the cabin. A scream pierced the night, then whimpering from within. We clung together until dawn, returning to find the pantry open again, food gone. Betty suggested the old truck for escape, and I agreed, the cabin's warped floors and coppery scent haunting us. Her confession about her father's dark past unraveled the truth. This wasn't Kyle's cabin, but a place of hidden horrors, a legacy of blood and silence. As we drove away, the forest silence felt alive, a presence lingering, unanswered questions trailing us into the dawn. Are you brave enough to delve into this tale of grief and terror? Or does the unknown lurking in the Hollis Cabin's shadows stir a fear you'd rather leave undisturbed?